Hey, hey everybody. Welcome to this audio follow-up, on my overview/review of Father Knows Beast, which premiered officially this past weekend here in the U.S. and North America on Discovery Family and places like Teletoon and what have you. But yeah, this is a bit of a follow-up. Because, I said what I had to in the overview, in the review. But, we got to look at this episode like, well, we know friendship is magic. We know the creators sometimes throughout the seasons will go in directions with episodes that you wouldn't expect them to go in. And this is one of those episodes where you kind of had an idea of what direction they would go in, but you didn't know how they were going to go in it, or how they were going to, make it happen. Because I think for a lot of us that have seen this kind of story, or this storyline play out in an episode of a live action or even an animated series, truth be told, even if the creators went in this direction with the characters, they usually wait until the character itself, the character that's getting manipulated, starts to kind of get clued in on, hey, this person may not be who they say they are. I need to gather some clues. I need, basically they don't portray the person that's being, or the character that's being manipulated, as being so oblivious to what's going on. Because, like I was saying, usually they have that character start thinking about what other people are saying, what other friends and family members, are telling him. And or people that are basically his family because their family because they raised them. Usually the character that's getting put in that position starts to think about, something does not seem right. And what happens at the end, the creators do that with Spike towards the end, but it's after he's been pretty much manipulated and oblivious to everything that it's not a good look for Spike, and a lot of people have admitted that. Because Spike has been portrayed as being able to figure something out and be able to figure that something is not right, something doesn't seem to add up when it comes to these kind of stories or similar stories like it. And you could definitely say that he gets that because he was raised and's been around Twilight a lot. So, being around Twilight and being raised by Twilight, the one thing that a lot of people will have agreed is you think being raised by her and living with her and being around her, that he'd be able to use anything that rubbed off from her onto him as a tool, if you will, to kind of figure out that, hey, something doesn't seem right, instead of having a character like Smolder who, like I said, and I will agree with a lot of people, has had some great character development, especially in the second half and in this episode. Basically trying to finally clue him in on the fact that, hey, dragons might be rude and obnoxious sometimes, but they don't cross lines like this guy's doing with their kids. So, for Smolder to be the one that gets him to start thinking, hey, you're right, something doesn't seem to be clicking, and that's towards the end, like I said, it doesn't make Spike look good. And mostly what a lot of people would look at when it comes to this episode is not how the creators made Spike look as a character, kind of regressing him a little bit, but they went in a direction that obviously I've never seen any other show that did the story arc would go. Because usually when this story arc or this storyline gets played out in an episode, it's usually midway through, like basically the one that's getting played and manipulated midway through the story, kind of starts figuring out, not just because help from the friends and the people that are like family or that are their family because they were raised by them, kind of cluing them in on, hey, something doesn't seem to be adding up. But usually it's the character themselves that kind of has a moment, and it's like, you know what? Everyone's right. Something doesn't seem to be gelling. Something doesn't seem to be connecting. And usually they get a moment where they notice that the individual that's pretending to be who they are is doing something that normally they wouldn't think or believe could make them relatable to them as family. So I think that's the one thing a lot of fans take away as a negative is, like I said, here you have Spike, who was raised and has been around Twilight his whole life. You would think, and it has shown in other episodes, that her influence would rub off on him. That her influence would and has rubbed off on him to the point that even himself is able to detect that something doesn't seem right when it comes to certain situations. So for him not to do that here, and only to wait to the end to have Smolder kind of clue him in on the fact that, hey, something's not clicking here, and here's why it seems to not be clicking. It doesn't paint Spike in a favorable light. It really doesn't. It doesn't really paint him in a favorable light. And here's the thing. And again, here's the thing. Spike has been shown to have intelligence, to be able to figure out when something's not connecting, because again, Twilight, he's been around Twilight enough that her influence on him should clue him in on a situation that doesn't seem to be right. And for the fact that it takes a character like Smolder at the end to kind of be like, hey, we dragons might be a little rude and obnoxious sometimes, but even we don't cross this line with our kids, with our family. Again, it doesn't paint Spike in a favorable light. And as I was trying to say, I've always noticed in other shows and shows, animated or live action, that have done this kind of a story, usually the character that's getting played midway through is able to figure out that something's not right. But for Hasbro, DHX, Nicole Duboc, Josh Haber, Megan McCarthy, for them to go the route that they did, to basically wait until the very end and have not the main six, who also, along with Twilight, the rest of the main six, and even Starlight, I believe, kind of figure out that, hey, something doesn't seem to be adding up, and, basically pointing out the holes in his story about how his mom gave him up and all that. But it takes someone like Smolder to finally get him to realize, hey, you're right, something's not adding up. Maybe I need to think about this. Again, great moment for Smolder to be able to be like, hey, talk to me, let me know what's going on. What did this sludge really tell you about dragons and how we act? So for her to have that moment, I will give the creators, the creative staff, a lot of credit. But overall, I think the fact that here you have Spike, who has grown up with Twilight, been raised by her, has been living with her, has learned from her, and has shown that the influence she has on him can rub off, and has indeed rubbed off at times throughout the series. For that not to be utilized here, for Spike himself to start figuring out that something's not adding up, and it takes not the main six, who you think not the main 6 or main 7, who you think would be the one Spike would listen to, but it takes someone like Smolder to be the one that's like, hey, you know, something doesn't smell right. You know, yeah, it's a great direction to go in, because yes, she is a dragon, and it makes sense for a dragon to kind of understand dragon traits, over how ponies understand them. But honestly, again, I think what fans take away from this is it just paints Spike in a negative light. It really does, because why not believe his friends that he's been around for most of his life? And all of a sudden it takes someone like Smolder, a fellow dragon, to make him second guess that, hey, something doesn't seem right, that, hey, you're right, something doesn't seem to be connecting at all. Again, I know I'm repeating myself here, but it basically does make Spike look bad. It doesn't make him look very smart. And again, you think him being around Twilight and the influence she has on him would rub off like it has previously, but here it doesn't show it. So yeah, Father Knows Beast, like I said, it was okay. It was a decent episode, but I think the negativity that came out of it was, you know, you painted Spike in a situation to where, you know, whatever influence that Twilight had on him of trying to figure things out just didn't seem to be rubbing off here. So, but that's all I'm going to say, guys. I'm going to get back into work now. Let me know what you think, and I'll talk to you later.